Hello, everyone, and welcome to New Consciousness Review. I'm Miriam Knight, and our guest today is Jack Ror, a recognized paranormal expert who has appeared domestically and internationally on the BBC, Showtime, the History Channel, and travel channels. Jack was awarded Best Psychic for 2012 by the prestigious online database, the Psychic Directory. He was recognized by the celebrity news website popeater.com, and he is regularly consulted on domestic and international criminal and missing persons cases. In recent years, his annual predictions were distributed globally by the Associated Press to more than 5,000 media outlets. In 2009, Jack Ror was depicted by Warner Television as the real-life version of Patrick Jayne from the hit TV show The Mentalist. In a unique documentary included with a DVD of the first season, Jack's expert commentary on psychic police work was interwoven with testimony from former FBI agents, scientists, and skeptics. Jack has also consulted on many feature films and appeared on Coast to Coast with George Noory, Overnight America with John Grayson, and many other radio shows, including now New Consciousness Review. Today, we'll be discussing his fascinating new book, The Rational Psychic, A Skeptic's Guide to Extraordinary Perception. Welcome, Jack. I am so delighted to have you on the show.
Thank you so much for having me, and I love the introduction. It couldn't have been better if I wrote it myself.
Well, my intuition says this is going to be a fascinating show. But please explain for us, Jack, the difference between intuition and psychic perception.
Well, we'll just jump right into it. Well, you know, the way that I explain this in The Rational Psychic is intuition is our gut instincts. It's our own personal guidance system. And that's a very important thing to remember, because you'll find oftentimes people talk about offering intuitive guidance or intuitive this, or they use the word psychic intuition interchangeably. And that's understandable. And in common day vernacular, it's really not a big deal. But if you really want to understand the nature of extrasensory perception and what psychic phenomena actually is, we have to split hairs a little bit. And intuition is that inner voice in us, and it comes from a place within our mind that seems to be independent of our thinking brain. And what it really is, it's our unconscious mind speaking to us by our feelings. And those feelings are generated from all our past experiences, those voices that were put inside of us from our critical parents or teachers, or even positive voices from loved ones or mentors. And so we've evolved as human beings to have this intuition, because arguably it's kept us alive, you know, through the millennia. Now, psychic perception is something that's unique from intuition, in that unique and similar. It's similar in that the information that arrives to us psychically also feels as if it comes from a place that we can't quite see where it comes from. It seems independent of us. But the important difference between intuition and psychic perception is that it is impersonal, and it can be objectively verified. Mm-hmm. So, you know, that's in a nutshell the way I look at intuition versus psychic perception. One is personal, one is impersonal. And you'll find that a lot of intrapersonal conflict begins, or people who see a psychic or as a psychic, if you notice, you know, resistance coming from your client, is when you try to impose your intuition onto someone else. The context is totally different. Your life, your needs are unique from mine. And oftentimes, novice psychics or well-meaning friends don't understand that what is right for me is not necessarily right for you. And therein also is why it's important as a practicing psychic or someone who's developing to understand their intuition versus psychic perception, because we want to be of service. And whereas you can be an example, perhaps, of, what might be ideal in a certain situation, you can provide an example via your intuition. We have to respect the boundaries of another individual and really keep our personal opinions to ourselves, our personal guidance to ourselves, and instead rely on our psychic gifts.
In your book, you delve very deeply into the sort of psychology of the situation, which is very fascinating. Do you think that one needs to be read up or studied up in psychology and sociology to be really a world-class psychic, or even just an effective psychic?
To be an effective psychic, you have to have a big heart, and you have to have a willingness to selflessly serve. Really, because how we affect change or we affect other people is through our hearts, not through our minds. So I'll say this. Being aware of psychological processes and sociological influences it definitely is helpful as a psychic, because it helps us understand our clients better, and it gives us a frame of reference through which to remove our wants, our needs, our emotions, our feelings from circumstances and our perceptions. It helps create a more objective mind. And in that objective space, we become much more effective viewers, clear seeing, clear hearing, all these things that we come to associate, the terms we associate with psychic perception. Really, the scientific end of the social sciences, what I acknowledge that's what it really does. It helps us to be more objective. It also can sponsor, feelings of compassion. When you see someone suffering, we're more prepared to recognize suffering when we see it. And also more importantly, like I keep diving into again and again in the rational psychic, is when we understand how the mind works, when we understand the interplay between the environment and our biology, we no longer need the kind of mythological metaphors and, spiritual sort of comparisons, and metaphors is a good word too, that so many of our colleagues rely on to explain the unusual, or to, help people cope. We can give people, I've always liked to say with people, when I was coming up in this and discovering my own abilities, I wasn't satisfied with, paranormal answers to paranormal questions. It just becomes this circular logic. So when I can point to something, really concrete and objective, and say, this is why we feel this way, or this is why things occur, then, I feel that prepares me to look deeper into myself, and into my clients, so we can really begin to do the work that enables us to feel and live our best self.
Your book is a great resource for anyone exploring the whole area of psychic phenomena, because you tend to separate the wheat from the chaff. What was your aim in writing this book? Who did you write it for?
That's another great question. I wrote The Rational Psychic it started out writing it for other psychics. And then as I was getting into it, I realized I didn't sit down with a plan. I'm the sort of person that if I have to follow, chapter 1 is going to be this and chapter 2 is going to be that, a whole outline, I get intellectually kind of like swamped. I have to be able to set my intellect aside and write from a very intuitive feeling place. And so initially, I felt really moved to address some issues and obstacles and problems that I saw amongst my colleagues, and issues that I I've found over the years with dealing with clients. And I wanted to write a manual of sort that would really, really help psychics understand themselves and their relationship with the phenomena and their clients better. And then as I was writing it, I realized, over the last 10 years, ghost hunting and paranormal investigation, as it were, have become so popular. And I've been in had the good fortune to work with and rub elbows with some of the most, informed and sought-after parapsychologists in this country. And through my relationship with them and working with them, I began to see how a lot of folks, psychics and non-psychics, they mistake, different paranormal experiences, or oftentimes even create paranormal experiences through distorting what they believe is psychic perception. And so I started to sort of introduce, those kinds of teachings as well. And before you know it, we had a guidebook for anyone who was really interested in paranormal and psychic phenomena. But I come from the point of view of a skeptic. And this is a really important point to understand because, sensitive people, psychics and healers and things, we don't like skeptics. So it's important people to understand that the word skeptic doesn't at its root is not someone who's cynical or dismissive or doesn't believe in sort of paranormal and psychic phenomena. A true skeptic is someone who asks questions, who searches, who has an open mind. Mm-hmm. And so really we decided to call the book The Rational Psychic, A Skeptic's Guide to Extraordinary Perception, what I was wanting to do is communicate to the reader that I see you have an open mind. I have an open mind too. But I have questions, and I know you have questions because I was where you stood. I begin the book talking about my own quest to understand what is going on here. Why do I sense information this way? Why do I feel so different from most people? I had some powerful experiences that left me feeling like there was so much more to life, but at the same time, disconnected from life. And so I looked to books. I looked to people I thought were experts who were writing books, and I couldn't find the answers I was looking for, and I was getting these paranormal kind of myths and hyperbole and old wives' tales that were infuriating to me because they didn't really get to the nuts and bolts of why people with alternative means of perception feel the way we do, and how and why we actually can perceive the information that we do. And this is the book that I wrote for my colleagues and for anyone interested in this material.